Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours. If you want to find out more about what we do, travel to officehours.global. First hour is general discussion about things that we're interested in around media or virtual production. Second hour is usually something we want to spend a little bit more time on. Today, Aaron Linney from Microsoft is actually going to come and talk to us about broadcasting with Teams and how that all works and what they've been doing. So we're really excited to hear from Aaron, and he'll be in the second hour. Tomorrow we have our own Emily Russo, and she will be actually hosting the education hour, or 2 hours. It's 8 to 10. That's not on YouTube. You have to come and see that in Zoom. But then at 10 o'clock, she's going to talk more about Google Slides and how she takes advantage of them. She is a master of Google Slides, and so she's going to be showing some of that. All right, let's jump into the questions. Bill, what do we have?
Our first one this morning comes from Mitchell Hill here on the panel from Wilmington, Delaware, and he says, is there a close replacement for Mukana when conducting a Zoom webinar?
Go ahead, Mitchell.
Yeah, this would be on the top of my wish list for anything that we were to get, but I've tried everything. I've tried the Mute Me, which is out the door. I've tried various software buttons and sub patches, and the thing that I found that works the best so far is just using a custom key on the keyboard. But boy, I sure would love to have a one button every time works.
I don't know. Are you talking about a different question than we're talking about? A close replacement for Mukana when conducting a Zoom webinar, or are you talking about Mute?
You know, I just had a mental.
It's okay.
Infarction.
I was like, I don't think that Mukana does any. I was like, I don't. When did Chris add a mute button? I was very confused.
Let me jump into the time machine and get you back.
Let's go back. Go ahead. What were you going to say about Mukana?
I was going to say, wouldn't it be cool if I was doing this for another client, and what would be the closest replacement to Mukana to give a back-end chat capability and what we do here? Probably nothing, but
nothing. Like there's nothing like it right now. Like believe me, it's part of my job to know whether there's something else like it. Slido is the closest probably to doing Q&A, but its back-end tools are rudimentary at best. So I think that you can cobble lots of things together, but I haven't seen anything. And we do, again, if you have budget, if you're a nonprofit, talk to me about it. If you have budget, then we do customize it for events very often. So it doesn't look like what you see here. We take things out and put things in depending on what people need for their shows. So it's also very flexible. It's not like a set, like this is just how it works. Sometimes it has questions, sometimes it has voting, sometimes it doesn't have any. You can just ask a question. Sometimes you can, there's all kinds of we change the layout, everything. So there's a lot to it. So if you're looking for it, you can talk to me about it. And we do plan to make it a lot less expensive and a lot easier to use as we get rid of the customization takes a little bit of work. So, but we are rapidly reaching a point where it'll drop a lot. So stay tuned. The next question.
Next one comes to us from Andy Kokendorfer in Viera, Florida, and he says, can the Office Hours 2.0 framing guide be downloaded somewhere? Thanks.
Chris Fenwick.
Yeah, it's in the Discord somewhere. I can never find anything in Discord, I'll be honest with you. Just send me a message.
Send Chris a message and he'll send it to you. Yeah. Chris is going to get like 100 of them. Where is the Fenwick frame?
Whatever. I am working on other Fenwick related products, by the way.
We may have. See. I'm going to be talking to someone about it, but I think that we're going to be able to put a repository up on Office Hours for all the resources that we put up, and we won't have to. Some of that's a really easy resource. Some of the stuff I wanted to put up was really heavy, and I had to find a CDN provider that would help us, and I think we have one. So stay tuned for that as well. Next question.
Tobias Moss is up next from Minneapolis, Minnesota. He says, for an outdoor gathering of approximately 150 standing people listening to people speak, how high would you put the portable PA? Ground level, a few feet up, 6 feet up? What?
Go ahead, Roscoe.
Well, you always want to put it up in the air. The high frequency tones will be absorbed by the human body. So anytime you put a speaker down low, you'll lose all the high frequency and hear a lot of what sounds like the Charlie Brown teacher.
Go ahead, John.
Really pay attention to where and the frequency dispersion. So like typical speakers may be a 90 by 90, but if you're dealing with a line array, it can be much smaller. So really pay attention to where your sound is coming out, what the coverage is going to be when you think about placing it.
And go ahead, Courtney.
For 150 people, you're probably not going to talk about a line array or anything to hang it off of, but I would get it above head level, so put it above 6 feet and angle them down if you can. That way, just remember that sound travels line of sight, just like light. So if you can stand anywhere in the audience and see the speakers, you should be able to hear them okay.
Go ahead, Jeffrey.
Yeah, and if you're dealing with a sub and top end issue, then the subs will go on the floor, on the ground, not on the stage, on the ground. You might want to shim it out so it can be nice and level. But it also depends on the ground that you're using. If you're on grass or anything like that, putting them straight on the ground is okay. If you got like a wood floor, then the vibrations might cause some problems. So you might want to put some carpeting or something like that underneath of that. Other than that, PAs on a stick, yeah, just above head level. Point it down if you can.
Yeah, I DJ'd 400 weddings. That's what I did 3 times a weekend. I always had the base of the speaker 6 feet high, exactly, and I'd lean the speaker down 10 degrees, and I would do it that way. And for 150, 200 people, it would be great. If it was more than that, I would not lean it down and just let it go across the audience. Next question.
Next one comes to us from Chris Taylor in Carlsbad, California. He says, Alex, one of the things that I enjoy most is seeing the full panel view in Zoom, especially with many familiar faces. How are you going to keep that inclusivity in 2.0?
Go ahead, John.
I notice the same thing. Sometimes when I'm watching producer view, attendee view, some of the cutters don't cut to the panel enough because I like to see Sky making funny faces, and I like to see Guy nodding in improvement, and I like to see Chris in disgust.
I think we just need to have the cutters cut to the panel more often while people are talking. It's not a I think that one of the hard parts we have with 2.0 is that when the panel changes dramatically, 2.0 doesn't handle that very well. And so when a lot of people leave for the second hour, 2.0 has issues with that. And so a lot of open blocks and stuff like that we're working on. So I think that that's probably why it's not used as much, is because the second hour sometimes gets lighter, and then we can't go to the panel view if you leave. If the panelists leave, so if too many of them leave, we can't go. So that becomes a challenge for us, and it's a technical issue that we're working on. Go ahead, Bill.
Well, just in editing theory, there are things called J cuts and L cuts where you're staying on the audio presentation and moving to video, or staying on the video presentation and moving to audio. So it's not necessary. And I know we have a lot of really highly qualified and really good editors who are working on our second thing, but there's nothing wrong with going to another shot and then coming back to the shot you're on just to break it up visually a little bit. And so maybe occasionally the panel could be used for that.
Go ahead, Sky.
And yes, I try to do a wide shot when there's humor, when there's reactions that could be happening. And to your point, I've been using the whole panel view this entire conversation. Thank you, John.
Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, yesterday I was cutting, I was noticing the same thing. I wanted to hang more on panel view just because I thought if I was a producer, I would really want to see those reactions, because there was a lot of them yesterday and the subject matter was more about the panel. So I left it on what I'd call the wide shot. So, because so much of communication is seeing the reaction of people's face gestures. So it makes it feel just more like family, like we're all together.
Yeah, and I'm 100% behind that. So it's just a matter of figuring out. I watch the show in gallery view the whole time. Like I very rarely see, but if we leave it on gallery view, then people complain that they want to see the whole picture. So there's a lot, but I do think that we can probably use the gallery view a lot more. Next question.
Next one comes from Douglas Carmichael, and he says, what is the most effective way to manage files stored in iCloud Drive from the terminal? I've looked in my library folder, but it doesn't seem to be a complete copy of all the files in iCloud Drive.
I have to say that I don't even know what goes up to iCloud Drive. I don't think about it. I'm glad that it's there, but I would never use it for anything mission critical. It's kind of a mystery. So I don't think that this is a place that Apple hits on all cylinders. But it's nice. It's evidently backing something up there. Next question.
Next question comes from Mitchell Hill in Wilmington, Delaware. Can we work on a way to globally mute our mics on Zoom?
Mitchell, this is the
question I answered before, and then I went into the time machine and came back. So Basically, it's just my number one request. I've tried everything, and none of them seem to be optimal.
I find I have a global one that works really well. See, as you can see me, mine works every single time. Every single time.
I've ordered one, so hopefully it'll work.
But that, to your point, that's why I bought it. I was just tired of trying to. It was always some little quirky thing, and I was like, I'm buying a piece of hardware that will make this go away. So but for those of you listening, that's a Studio Technologies 205. It's not the cheapest way to do it, but it always works. Go ahead, Bill.
And I'm using the poor man's version of that, which is a Rolls mic mute that probably cost it's under $100, I think. And it does basically the same thing. But the problem with global mute through the Zoom activation system is if there are people like Alex and I who are using hardware mutes, and maybe Mitch someday, then a global send to Zoom that mutes everybody mutes us. And we're not used to that because we don't automatically go to unmuting in Zoom. We use the tool that we have.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I'm looking at, because we have Zoom OSC kind of tied into it, one of the hopes that I have is that we can have something that basically goes, when someone's talking single, or when someone's talking, or when we have a Supersource up, that it just mutes everybody that's not live. Like if you're not on the screen, it just turns your mic off in it. But if we come back to you, of course, it turns it back on again. So it's actually turning on and off. It's a little scary to do it, so we'll test it a lot before we do it. But I think that would be the most effective way to do it, is just to have it managing our audio. And once we eventually get to ISO audio, we won't have to really do it in Zoom. We'll just be able to do it in a mixer. And the mixer will just go whoop, 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 just depending on who Isadora should be talking. Yeah, go ahead, Mitchell.
I guess the downside for me doing the way you do it is that I would have to leave my the icon that says I'm muted would always be on until I unmute it with the Studio Technologies. It won't flag Zoom.
That's right. But what I just said wouldn't be affected because it would just open and close it when it needs to. It's not looking for whether you did it or not. It's just saying close it or open it. I don't really care whether the mics are on or off. I mean, I prefer everybody to have hardware mutes and then learn how to use them because they're way more efficient. It's way easier to go fast than with a hardware mute. Next question.
Next one comes to us from Michael Forrest in London in the UK. How would you customize a large road trunk with equipment racks and shelving? I want to be like a transformer, fold away and transport my rig, then it unfolds into a full-size desk or something.
I'll go with Jeffrey.
The problem with that is that you don't want to do too much to it because the whole idea of the road case is to protect the items. And if it folds and origamis into some swan or something like that, that can become problematic because it could fall apart. With that said, I had a friend that one of the best mods I've ever seen with the road trunk is basically a peekaboo door. So you can open it up. And if you have detachable wheels, if you have wheels on it, detachable wheels, so those wheels fit right into the peekaboo, and then you can close it up. Other than that, just use it as a regular table in your production. You should be good.
Good, Courtney.
I built a sound cart many years ago using this concept of the ability to have all the equipment inside. It folded up, and you could throw it on an airplane. And then when you get there, you open it up. And the top case, I wish I had pictures of it, but the top case had a lid with a double-jointed hinge. So as the top opened up, it folded all the way around 270 degrees and hung down onto the bottom of the second case, which it latched to. And then there was a third case for cables on the bottom that had a drawer. And the middle case had two doors that opened like this in front of you. I built it, had it built by A&S Case Company and out of plywood and fiberglass. And it was so heavy I could not lift it at all once you latched it together. So bear that in mind. Weight. And with weight restrictions on airline travel these days, cases can't be above 75 pounds unless you have special dispensation from the airline or you have to send them air freight. Mm-hmm. So try and make multiple cases that latch together so you can separate them so no one case goes over the weight limit. And once you latch them together, and I had a wheeled base that would latch on the bottom, which had casters on it so you could roll it around. You could take that off, and so they wouldn't be rolling around in the airplane. And have the cases run separately when they get together. You have latches on the side that are casket latches. You use a key in them, like a hex key in them, and you turn it, and they're completely recessed when you travel so that they don't get knocked off. And they latch the cases together once you stack them up.
And I have, I'll show you a couple of, we've built a lot of these, but I have a couple of that are probably a little bigger than what you need, but I'll show them to you anyway. So this is one. Now, what you see here is that the this is actually attaching right to the case. So this is the lid to my case, and we make a lot of these this way. And let's try to get this thing to do what it's supposed to do. So this was an all-in-one, very, very simple one, and it allows us to just pull the case off and throw this over here, and basically the front was the video desk and the back is the audio desk, and so the audio desk just has it. I think I have another photo of this. There's the audio desk. So a very simple audio desk over here, but this is one case, and you have a switcher and a router. You have just audio here, and these are where you actually hold these cameras. So the cameras and tripods all slide into this thing. So everything goes into this one case, and you can just roll it in and actually turn it into something. So that's the case there. I think we fit everything in. There might have been one or two 1650s that went with that, but it pretty much just undid it. Marty built these little pieces that basically there's a hole in here, and this pole just drops into that hole, and then you tighten it to put the monitors on. Those are the PTZs that we used. These are a 3-case version. You can see that you can build these. By the way, building shelves into cases is awesome. The problem with this one is exactly what we ship these, and the problem is exactly what Courtney was talking about. These were too high, and so they cost twice as much to put on Rocket. So literally, it cost a lot of money to make them this high. So the next version we made was shorter, and so this is so here you have, this is our video rack, audio rack, and each one of those use their tables as a piece, as a setup. These were a little while ago, so we had these little cameras. Built all these together, and then there's snakes that basically, one snake that kind of connects the two of them together. But a lot of the same kind of designs, well labeled, kind of set up so that we can kind of keep it looking neat, as you go through this. And this is a couple years ago, but it gives you a sense of it. So we have packed in here, our free speak. That's a Axient transmitter. I don't remember what, I think this is the talkback, and then audio. So that's our audio kit, and all of that was all tied in. So, and that would take about 45 minutes to set up for a show. So you could roll it in, and it would do its thing really fast. Another way that we've done it is this way. This is in the Sumo Hall in Tokyo, but these are exactly what was talked about before, where we can these can be latched together or just stacked. These are just little SKVs that we put into 1650s and pull them out and stack them up, and all this stuff would kind of unwrap. And this would take a couple hours to get it working just right. So anyway, there you go. Next question.
Next one comes from Tim McKean in Chandler, Arizona, and he says, when I record a Keynote with the live video element, the export doesn't include live video, just a silhouette placeholder. What am I doing wrong?
I have never actually done that. Live video is new, and I've never tried to record live video as I went through it. Go ahead, Roscoe.
Well, yeah, I'm kind of like you. It's two things. Our recording apps tend to grab sources, so I'm worried that the recording app, and it doesn't say here what you're recording it on, is grabbing that video source away.
I think he's recording it inside a Keynote. Keynote has its own
inside
QuickTime
Keynote.
record.
Yeah, okay. I was going to say the answer is use an external recording.
Yeah, that would be the fix. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, kind of the same thing. My guess is it's a brand new feature. They are probably furiously working on the ability to grab the video right now.
Yeah.
Like in a conference room, there's 12 people trying to figure out how to do it. I would imagine in the next month or 6, it'll work.
Yeah, absolutely. Next question.
Next one comes from Bill Craig in Longview. I think that's in Texas. By
the way, I just want to go back that the answer is we kind of went around it, and it was mentioned smartly, but I just want to make sure we underline it. The answer is an external recorder that Roscoe had suggested, is some kind of external recorder. That can be a little HDMI recorder like what Courtney uses. I use a Pix 240 to do it because I have them laying around, but it could be anything that has or another computer that's getting it in. But you just need another you need an external source to record your movie, and then it'll work now. And then, as Chris said, it'll probably get fixed later. Okay, now we'll go to the next question. I felt like we kind of left that one kind of half open. So next question.
Absolutely. Bill Craig in Longview. And he says, I have a 30-foot by 60-foot boardroom table. I need a mic system with several mics so that I can pick up everyone, especially the soft-spoken people, for a Zoom meeting. Any suggestions?
Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. Zoom just had a nice webinar where they showed some solutions, and they're like, and we took out all the mics that were, up in the ceiling, and look at how great this sounds from 30 feet away, and it was just awful. So there's some solutions out there that are pretty pricey, and some that are pretty cheap. So the ceiling ones, like the arrays, will have the Sennheiser one has 24. So Sennheiser, Yamaha, Sony all make these type of ceiling array microphones that are beamforming with a point. They'll use software to point towards whoever the active speaker is around a boardroom. Then there's smaller ones like this that you can put like hockey pucks in front of people. But the ones that we like, and we just hooked up Jason Beisch with some of these are the Microflex series, which will allow you to wirelessly put these little guys, getting the subject closer to the mic element is always the key to getting great audio. So having these on a rechargeable base where you can take them, there's no wires cluttering up the table, and then you can put them away and charge them at night. So I like the Microflex series.
Yeah, go ahead, John.
I also think it's +1 on the Microflex stuff, but also spend some money in isolating the room and getting the room to sound as good as possible, and then getting the mics as close to people as possible. I've used the ceiling mics. They are okay. They're intelligible, but they don't sound good.
It is so key to fix the room. I had one room where they were using these area mics, and I was like, how is this even working? The room, all the walls literally had cloth over top of them, and then they had diffusion in them, going 3 inches in, and then they had lead, or not lead, but like whatever that heavy lining is. I mean, it was just an incredible amount of lead, what we call lead lining, but I don't know what it actually is made of now. And it was like every mic worked because there was enough diffusion in it, and that. So you're absolutely right. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
So the bad thing about area mics and podium mics that on a table is that when they start typing on their keyboards, or they're picking up their drinks, or especially if they're eating food, you're going to hear every single bit and piece of that. So make sure that you have some foam to put on top of those mics. And if you're doing area mics, it's always nice to actually have something that'll actually tilt it at a small angle. We used to do that all the time. And then of course, there's always the possibility of giving everybody a single lav. I'm with a group that we're going to be meeting next month, and that's what's going to happen is they got a X32 in the middle, and then lavs coming right up to them, and they just basically keep them low until somebody starts speaking, and then somebody's actually changing the volume for that person.
Go ahead, Chris.
A word of advice about the hockey puck mics. I was teching somebody a few weeks ago, and it was like, this doesn't sound right. And this particular board table had these little trap doors where, you could plug in your laptop or Ethernet or whatever. And I said, do you see any mics on the table? He goes, no, I don't. I go, open that little trap door. Sure enough, the mic was down inside the trap door. So we pulled it out, put it right in front of the guy. Sounded much better. The other problem with those things is I was doing a single in a boardroom once, and the executive's assistant was sitting right off camera the whole time, shuffling papers and stuff next to another microphone. They didn't do that in all the tech rehearsals, and we went live, and the guy was shuffling papers the whole time, and it was a nightmare.
Yeah, go ahead. Bill, really quick.
Yeah, I was just going to note that some mics, PZMs particularly, and Crown used to make a lot of them for the boardroom use, the table surface is actually part of the acoustic profile of that mic. So if you don't have a flat PZM sitting on a table flat, it doesn't work very well.
Good, Courtney.
Get a Dugan Auto Mix because it's very good at highlighting one microphone while attenuating all the others. And if all microphones are open at the same time, it's going to sound awful because the sound from one person will be entering all the microphones, and it will sound awful.
I think the Microflex has the auto mix built into it.
I was going to say, a lot of the systems that you buy that are designed for boardroom use do have auto mix built into them. And some of them have push to talk, so that you have to hit a key on the microphone to open your microphone, and then it mutes everybody else until you release that key. So
Another way that we've used the microflexes, I love the microflexes. They're as a production, I can hear the bits, so it's not the perfect production mic, but as a meeting mic, they're I think some of the best out there. And one of the things we've done is they have little belt packs, and those belt packs that you put regular mics in have their own mics. So we've actually had people just drop them in their front pocket, and had everybody drop them into a front pocket or clip them on inside, and we've actually gotten relatively good audio from that. It's not as good as real mics, but it's better than an area mic, which is what most people have in conference rooms. Next question.
Danny Law in Malaysia says, other than Nanlite Pavotubes, what would be similar in quality that does not cost as much as Pavotubes? Need for backlighting when in video conference calls.
Go ahead, David.
I'm using the Ulanzi R70. It's a magnetic one, has this articulated little leg thing to make it stand up. And H180 gives me that ice cool blue background.
Go ahead, Bill.
When I think of backlight, I think of separating people out. You can see there's a little rim light on me right now. And I just use newer 160s. They cost about $40 or $30 a piece on Amazon. And if you're not looking for particular color temperatures and things like that, they put out a lot of light for very little money, and you can get a little AC adapter for them. It means you put them on permanently.
Next question.
Aaron Giancarla of Flagstaff, Arizona says, looking for an adjustable pole for my camera that will attach to the desk and support a Blackmagic 6K. Suggestions?
I'll go ahead, John.
I've used the Elgato camera mounts or multi-mount before. It's a little pricey. I found that I get pretty close to the same quality with Jusmo, Jusmo. They have a camera mount on Amazon for about $50. If you don't need to adjust it too close to your face, if you got a zoom lens that makes it easy to mount it almost anywhere you need to.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, and if you have a long enough lens, I'd advise probably going with something like a mic stand, so you get it off the desk, and then just take a adapter that's a 1/4 inch to 5/8 inch on top, and that way, if you're banging on the desk or moving stuff around the desk, it's not going to shake your camera.
All right, Mitchell.
I use the Slick Creator Pole or Creative device. They have a strange name for it. And I have everything on it. I've got my teleprompter, which is very small. I've got my camera on it. I've got my confidence monitor, and I've got the boom for my microphone. And as you can see, it doesn't shake that much. The table's, of course, pretty solid. But I find it very, very sturdy as far as poles go.
Yeah, I think the one that for mounting that I'm the most happy with is Triad Orbit. And they have a lot of different things, but I use it to the ground, to the point that was made earlier with the mic stand. The Triad Orbit is very heavy. It has a modular top that you can just pull off rather than having to screw everything in. So you screw it in once and you just snap it in. It takes almost it's within 6 inches of if you put it under the table within 6 inches of the wall, you can get it up there. But having a heavy camera attached to your desk is difficult to do well. Mitchell does it well, but it's difficult. Next question.
Next one comes from Jonas Dattel in Stuttgart, Germany, and he says, Dolby.io announced they acquired Milicast. Has anyone worked with Milicast before as a content distribution network?
We've tracked them. We haven't used them. The reason is they're really expensive, because doing WebRTC is super expensive, to do at any kind of scale. So what Milicast is a WebRTC-based CDN. So they've built a way to normally you start getting limited by a server at 100 or 200 viewers, where the server will start to really burn up. So what they've done is they figured out a way to distribute that, so they can have lots of servers that do that. I'm sure it's scaling up in AWS or something to do that. And so that gives you, the idea is it gives you sub 1 second, latency across many, many, many people. And people are very obsessed with low latency. The problem really with it is that for Milicast is that it is it takes RTMP in a lot of cases, which is already going to give up seconds. So you're not getting the sub-second that you thought you were, because you're streaming RTMP in. Now, if you do WebRTC in, which it can do, then you may get that. The other problem with it is that WebRTC at volume is just going to everybody. Everyone's going to have glitches. We see it here, and people have little glitches and everything else. And the question is, at volume, why do you need low latency? Like, what will really make a difference there? When the thing is HLS So low latency HLS, which is something that Apple has been rolling out, and Colleen Henry has been building. If you go up to GitHub and look for Streamline, you'll see a whole thing on low latency HLS. 2.5 seconds, 3 seconds of latency. That's about the same as what, if you RTMP into Milicast, you get the same thing, except that the low latency HLS is 1/10 the cost and twice the stability. so it's not. I think that this was probably a whiff, as far as a purchase. But maybe they know something that I don't. All right, next question.
Andy Wagner in Brooklyn, New York is up next. He says, any recommendations on virtual control rooms, in particular if wanting to have ISO feeds available for clip, cut, and playback?
Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, right now there's a conference going on with Mitch Jacobson, and he's been doing some of the NAM shows with a lot of playback, and he's using a TriCaster. I'd suggest if you want to jump into his sessions, there's Photo Joseph and a couple other guys that are in that right now, and he's got some awesome images, and he walks through them. So I would jump on that forum, and I'll put a link in Mukana.
And this is not the cheapest solution, but you didn't say you want to make it be cost effective. The best way to do clipping, re-editing, and redistribution in the cloud is Blackbird. And it is super expensive, but it is. I've used it on a couple projects, and it's very powerful too. Next question.
Andy Kokendorfer is back from Viera, Florida. I had a problem yesterday with an executive that leaned left or right, shifting their weight on elbows during live events, making video crops very difficult. Advice? Thanks.
Chris.
Alex has said in the past, one of our jobs is to keep the client away from the sharp objects. And in your case, the sharp object might be a cropped box. So you can either fix the person, the wetware, and say, stop shifting your weight. You probably don't have that ability. And it may be that you didn't have access to that exec until you went live. It might be that the designing the show without the crop box would have been a better option.
Yep. Go ahead, Mitchell.
I try to limit the number of people that have access to the main talent, and if that happens to be the CEO, if I'm there, it's me. And the first thing that I make very clear with them is that I'm here to make sure that you look very, very good in every possible situation. So part of me is telling you, don't shift around on don't look tired, don't look bored, do your best up front. Now, that doesn't help very much during the event, but like Chris says, maybe the crop is a little too aggressive.
Yeah, the hard part is that when someone's not trained to do something properly, you can't tell them ahead of time. Like you can't tell them right before the show. Eliminating characterisms for people is devastating to their presentation ability. So you can't. Like a lot of times people will say, "Why didn't you just tell them not to do that?" And I'm like, because that would distract them. They'll think about it the whole show. And so a lot of what we do is you look at it and we call it leaving the knife in. Just like sometimes if something's in you, you make it worse if you pull it out. And so so we just go that you can't do that. So we have to very carefully. Someone's mic's open. We have to be very, very careful about the input we give to our executives and any participant on any show as to what they should pay attention to. And we try to say it in a way. We'll try to correct it sometimes. Sometimes we won't tell them fully why we're trying to correct it because we know that we can't fix that. I'm not going to be able to fully fix it, and then they're just going to be upset about it. So you have to be very careful about giving coaching to executives because then they'll come off. All they'll remember is they'll come off stage and they'll be upset that you told them that. They're not going to care about whether it was better or not. So you just have to be, that's also why we like to do setup calls a week before instead of the day of the event, is so that we can go through all of that and have them do whatever they're going to do. And then on the day of the event, if they don't fix the things that we told them to fix, we don't talk about it again other than any minor major because they've decided that they didn't care, and I don't need to have that argument with them on the day of the show. I want to have the argument with them a week before the show. But if they don't want to fix it, then that's the way that they're going to go out. And if they don't like what they saw later, that'll be a lesson for them, but you want to say enough to cover your cover your backside, but you don't want to say so much that it gets in their head. Go ahead, Bill.
I was going to say exactly some of the same things that Alex just said. It's such a delicate dance. And I always remembered that in any set where I had a CEO or a president of a company, my biggest sunk cost was their time. That was way in advance of any extra cameras or anything I might have there. Because if they're in a multi-million-dollar compensation package, their hour or two was way more than all the gear that I had with me. So so you can't fix that the first time. And I agree with Alex. You just have to bite the bullet and do the best you can. The next time, though, I'm going to have 2 additional camera operators who are really good, and I'm going to tell each of them, I want you to give me a crossing shot of that guy if he goes into that mode, and give me the best shot you can. And maybe I'll have something I can cut away to, because 2 camera operators are way less expensive with full rigs than that man or woman's time sitting on my set for an hour.
And the thing you're always weighing when you do this is, will they be upset later when they see how bad they looked, or will they be upset with you now because you screwed up their presentation? And that is an art. Like, it's not, there's no like set of rules. It's just that you have to make that decision in real time. But like, we've had people, like I've had people who are working with me that are tweaking someone's little the corner of their frame they want to do it for 20 minutes. I'm like, you got to stop. This is the CEO of some, $1 billion company, just stop. Just don't do that. So it's an issue. Next question.
Next question comes just from Kenny Hampton in Greenville, Illinois. He says, Office Hours panelists do a great job of setting audio levels pre-show. Is there a Zoom feature now or on the horizon to have audio leveling features built in for a typical meeting group, maybe controlled by the host?
Go ahead, Roscoe.
Well, Zoom has its auto mic setting, so you could rely on that if you want to. What I do is I pull in Ulean meters. Ulean's a free plugin, and I run it through Audio Hijack. That just allows me to display levels. I like Ulean because it has the history. People can see, behind them what exactly they've done. So that would be my workaround.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, one of the main problems with Zoom is you normally don't hear your side tone. You don't hear yourself because you only hear the incoming sound, not the outgoing sound. The auto level can be problematic because it can pick up, when you're quiet, it can pick up other things and bring it up. Its noise cancellation is pretty good. If you leave original sound off, it'll do a pretty good job of determining what is noise and attenuating that in the background. But generally, we here like to keep auto level off so that the background noises don't get pulled up very much by Zoom. And there isn't I don't think there's a host control that, other than mute, that allows the host to set levels. Maybe that's a future improvement.
Go ahead, Bill.
Courtney nailed it. AGC auto gain control is the devil, and I try to avoid it if at all possible.
Let's go to the next question.
Jonas Natella in Stuttgart, Germany, said Alex mentioned that for some events he avoids Germany because of regulations. What type of regulations are an issue there?
I have to figure out if it's still an issue. I was just looking at that after you asked the question, and it may have been dropped down. For a long time, Germany had it set up that YouTube and others could be held accountable for anything that happens on the live stream directly, and that meant everybody blocked it. It looks like it actually may have been a while since they approved it. But I know that was for years. That was a thing. Like, can you block Germany? like that was like we had this restriction of like, or we would do live streams, and people in Germany would complain that they saw the live stream, but they couldn't see it. And it was because it was being blocked. It does look like it. I haven't had to do a stream that dealt with this for a while. So it looks like it might've been a couple years ago that it might've been lifted, but Germany had a bunch of liability laws. That was the issue. And that's why everyone stayed away from it for a long time. Next question.
Next one comes from our own George E. Kennedy Jr. in Washington, D.C. What's your browser of choice and why? Chrome, Safari, Firefox?
We've got a lot of answers, so let's go kind of a buzz through it. Go ahead, George.
So Chrome, but lately it's just been giving me horrors trying to get into servers and so forth. It keeps blocking it, and I'm trying to figure out a workaround. I love Safari also, but I've been on Chrome for so long, it's hard to move all of those bookmarks.
That's my problem too. Go ahead, Bill.
I love Safari because of Apple's overall publicly disclosed security and privacy policies, but I use Chrome every day for office hours. It's been solid for me. So Safari first, Chrome second is how I see it.
Go ahead, John.
I use Safari on a Mac and the Brave browser on Windows.
Okay.
Yeah, Brave browser on both, and it's got the basic attention token that you can use to reward content creators. So it's kind of cool, but I like the fact that people can't follow me around as much. So I've been jumping around between Safari, Chrome, and trying to use Brave more and more. It's the default browser now set up.
Yeah, go ahead, John.
The answer is yes. Right now I have Firefox, Safari, Chrome, and Opera all open, working on different stuff.
Go ahead, Roscoe.
Chrome for LastPass plugin plus Ghostery plus remote desktop, and then Safari I use all the time just when I open new stuff, and because I don't have all the security stuff on it.
You go ahead, Mitchell.
Safari because it's Apple.
Courtney.
I use Chrome because it's cross-platform, and I have about 40 different laptops, and it's nice because the settings synchronize whenever I open one, and all my latest bookmarks and settings are right there.
Okay, Jason.
Yeah, Edge from Microsoft. It's based on Chromium now, so that's very helpful. I use it because at work we have all Office 365 apps, and everything syncs across all my devices with that.
Yeah, I like Safari a lot, and I love the little reports that, like, we blocked all of the stuff. And really, if you look at the new reports from the new OS, Apple is just getting so good at poisoning the well, because you just look at it and you look at all these trackers that are in every page that you're going to, and Safari tells you what they all are, and you're like, really? Like, you really, like, there's 35 trackers on some like little site that you went to. It just makes it more and more icky, so to do that. So I look at that. I will say that I use Chrome mostly, and the reason I use Chrome mostly is because, number one, all my bookmarks are there, and it's very hard for me to get, like the time it would take to get them across, I haven't really figured out. And the second thing is because LastPass is on the right, and the LastPass click on the left on Safari drives me crazy. I don't know why, just don't like it. It feels like it's on the wrong side, and so I literally don't use it for anything I need LastPass for because of that one weird little tick. And it used to be on the right side, now it's on the left side, and now I won't use it. It's weird. Next question.
Kenny Hampton in Greenville, Illinois says office hours references the term Supersource often. Will you clarify this further, please?
Go ahead, George.
So it's the combining of multiple sources into one frame, I would say. But Supersource is more on the Blackmagic side. In the other production world, you might get a 4-up, a 2-up, 3-up, which is the combining the same sources. But more Supersource is mostly Blackmagic.
Next question.
Joel in Mumbai, India is up next. He says, is there a tool to monitor SCTE35 in an SDI feed?
There are definitely tools to do it. There's not a lot of inexpensive tools to do it. So this is ancillary data that is kind of going along with for ad insertion typically. And so there are I'm trying to think of the names of all of them off the top of my head. I just got to that question too slowly. But what you're looking for is deep packet inspection inside of the SDI, and so there's a variety of. Oftentimes, scopes, systems will have that. In fact, I think that you can do it with the AJA. The AJA analyzer will show all the extra data that's coming in. So that's one of them, but that's really expensive. But almost all of them are expensive, 10 grand or more pieces of hardware, but they will look at all that ancillary data. And I just can't think of an inexpensive one off the top of my head. Next question.
Kenny Hampton is back from Greenville, Illinois, and he says, referencing wireless room mics, does the Sure Microflex system encrypt the audio similar to Revolabs? For sensitive boardroom conversation, we don't want our wireless conversations picked up by others on the same frequency. And so what are the options?
Go ahead, John.
Yeah, the Microflex uses AES 256 encryption, so it's probably in line with what the Revo is doing as well.
Yeah, it definitely does what you need to do there. It's in a lot of boardrooms, so that's a big piece of their business. Next question.
Craig McFarland in Boston, Massachusetts, as Alex mentioned, there is an optimal image format for the ATEM Mini media. Explain, please.
Yeah, so when we use any media, I use JPEGs all the time, but if I'm using any media with an alpha channel, I'll use a Targa file as opposed to a ping. And the reason for that is that it when the switcher saves a ping, it does it correctly. But typically, if you save a ping out, it's going to save an edge on it. The ping is going to have a transparency in it, and it doesn't save it to black. So the Targa file, it took me a little while to figure out what happened. So the Targa file saves it to an alpha channel, and the switcher tends to work better with that. So especially on fine edges, like a little logo for something down in the corner, you're going to find that you get better edging with a Targa file as opposed to ping file on a typical export out. And so, so what we, and it, unfortunately, it's not the target file that comes out of a motion. Not that I'm bitter. Or out of compressor, because that one's compressed. So, but you can save it out of Photoshop, and you can also save it. There has been in the last couple of years a Targa export out of Affinity Photo, I believe. And so what it does, what the problem with the way the switcher works is that Blackmagic is saving a step by pre-multiplying the black to the color. So it's punching a hole out to drop something in, and then it's just adding on top of it, but it doesn't do the reverse punch. And that reverse punch saves them a cycle. It saves the switcher a cycle to not do a secondary, an inverted alpha punch. And so that's the issue. And so as a result, the Targa with the alpha channel, we find composites fine, edges better than a ping. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael is up next. He says, what Mac-based tools would you recommend for managing a large music collection? I have a significant number of CDs that probably would exceed the 100,000 song Apple Music limit.
Go ahead, David.
I've got an old Mac running High Sierra in the living room, iTunes 12, and like 180,000 songs on there. I just hit play, let it go. It's good for a year and a half.
That's awesome. Go ahead, Mitchell.
I use the very good J River Media Central Media Center. And it works with Mac, Windows, Linux, probably everything else. Works great on my system. It's cranking away behind me somewhere.
Next question.
Morgan Price in Victoria, British Columbia, Canada says, if wanting to do a little test with comms for a small academic workshop using Zoom meetings with 4 facilitators, what would the panel recommend to dabble with? We all use Macs, if that helps.
Want to do a little comms test? Go ahead, Chris.
Well, it's important to understand that you could use anything. You could use, FaceTime probably next to Zoom. I probably wouldn't try that. You could do a group phone call where you're just all dialed in with voice. But Unity, which a lot of us really like, has a web-based version that's much easier to set up. And it's good to know that there are several people in our community, and we can hook you up with somebody that actually have the full Unity, I think it's called Unity Direct or whatever, the servers, and they will rent you out, a package of, 5 or 10 seats for a week or a month. And I would recommend doing something like that.
And generally, they'll let you play. If you have 4 of them and you want to do a test, Jim Hankins or Tucker I'm sure would let you play with them. Like I may be overcommitting them. It won't let everyone, but I think that they'd let you play with it for a test or something like that. And then if you really wanted to use it, you need to rent it. Go ahead, Jason.
Fenwick covered it. We're good. Unity.
Yeah. Unity is probably the best one for that. Next question.
Scott Mueller in Germantown, New York says, is there a way to get rid of the mute mic icon and number of participants in the corner of local pinned Zoom room displays?
Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, we call that screen debris, and it's there. So you can scale up and crop, and then that you have to tell your talent to be a little bit looser in their framing, so you're not tightening in on them. If you go up to like 107%, that should scale it out. I haven't had to do it because we go to Zoom Room NDI now, and that produces a completely debris-free signal. So I would use NDI.
Go ahead, Chris.
And even if you're using HDMI like I use, Zoom ISO has a checkbox for all that stuff. You can just go tink, 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 turn it all off, and it's completely free.
And we use it out of SDI, and we do the same thing. Zoom ISO will get rid of all the debris. Next question.
Bethany in Mexico says, how are people connecting their Streamdecks to the cloud?
Go ahead, George.
I'm just going to say the only way to connect your Streamdeck to the cloud right now is what's called PriTunnel. And I'm just going to say, office hours folks, there's a lot of us here that have beautiful minds. And 2 of those people are Shirag and Jonas. And there's a script. And you could contact Shirag on the cloud production on Discord. But there's a script that we could set up in 10 minutes. and they just wrote that. So you might want to contact them offline. But there's the only way to go right now is with a VPN.
And we have a ton of questions for the second hour, but I think we're near the end of the first hour. So if you've got a couple questions, we probably have room for one or two more, but let's go to the next one.
George Butters in Halifax, Nova Scotia says, is there a way to make a browser window semi-transparent?
I did it. My browser window is semi-transparent.
Ooh, slick.
This is I'll come back. That's using the ATEM. So I have one monitor going into the ATEM, and so by doing that, I was able to make it semi-transparent. So I don't know. Does anyone know of any other way to? Now it's the problem is I use the actual browser that I was talking to you on. So now
Mark this day as the day we invented the Ghost browser.
The Ghost browser, yeah, exactly. You could probably do that I imagine that could be done as a WebKit solution. You know, that there's no reason why someone couldn't build a WebKit that would allow for that process. I don't know. Because that would just be able to be a browser, and then you could control opacity. So someone could probably write one really quickly. So someone who knows how to use WebKit. But I think that would be one solution. You can see how I just tap danced until someone put another question in. All right, next question.
Next question comes from Ronnie Horsky in Tromsø, Norway. He says, what external solutions for M1 to output HDMI or SDI is good for using together with Zoom ISO?
Go ahead, Chris.
I was literally just reaching for the button.
Yeah, go ahead. I threw the ball before you. I didn't want the offender to know.
Since you took liberties, I will too. On that last question, where a bunch of us did actually have our hands up, and you missed it.
Oh, I missed
Craziness.
it. Sorry.
I will tell you.
That's because I moved it over and I couldn't see it anymore.
In regards to transparency, one of the things I really love on the Mac, if you just double click on a PNG, it will show you the thing, like a lower third or whatever, over black. But if you use the quick look, where you just select the file, hit the space bar, it opens it up, you can actually see ghosted through it. Anyway, so for this, sorry, I pulled a call in on you there.
That's good. It's all good. It's all good. Right. It was my fault.
On this particular one, it's the pluggable. There's plenty of links for it, but basically you have to use a protocol called display link. Now, display link works. It can be a little iffy, but basically what it does is it tricks the Macintosh into allowing it to have the M1 to have more outputs than allowed by Apple. So the M1 Mac Mini is only allowed 2 outputs. So if you have one output is controlling Zoom ISO, that means you get one clean ISO. With display link and the little deal, you can very easily get 2 at 1080. If you plug in 2 of the pluggable devices, you can get 4, but you're probably only going to get 640 by 360. You will get them completely clean. What Alex does is using, as he does, more boxes and things and bears on my, and he gets 4, I believe you get 4, right? 4 SDIs.
4 SDIs per computer.
Now, you just said M1. Now,
and that's what I use. I use an M1.
But you didn't say M1 Mac Mini. I'm making that assumption.
I am.
I will say this. On the newer laptops, the M1 Max and M1 Ultra, Elemental P, whatever they're calling them, you can get a lot of monitor outputs from those things. But if you do the math, it's actually cheaper to buy 2 M1 Mac Minis and get a couple of the display ports. And by the way, Alex, I did not forget about our little bet about an updated M1 before, or Mac Mini before. What are you doing? You're completely distracting me. Before WWDC.
Yeah.
$100 yes. People, stick around. There's gonna be a payoff.
Yeah. So but the Mac Mini is we're really successful with that. Go ahead, George.
I agree with the Mac Minis, and my farm is growing here, and the word on the street is, and we don't spread rumors here, is that there will be a new Mac Mini, the highest end Mac Mini you can have in the spring. So let's keep our fingers crossed.
It'll be faster than all previous ones. The best one we've ever made.
When would it ever not be? Like, yeah, this one was okay, but
sorry, folks, we
we had to back up a little bit.
On this one.
COVID. We had to like have a couple less processors. Next question.
Next one comes from Sean Jensen in New York, and Sean says, just got a Streamdeck, and I'm kicking myself for waiting so long to get one. Curious what interesting and unique ways people are using them.
Go ahead, Sky.
Well, Sean, you and I can experiment together because I know I'm not using it nearly as well as some of the other people here, but the things that I go to immediately, I have got my Gmail, I've got my Slack, I've got my Chrome, but I also have my comms button. So I have that button to talk to either the Unity comms, but it is so much deeper than that. And that's where Guy Cochran probably can tell us how to really use it.
Go ahead, Guy.
I was just going to show that I use it with vMix to quickly jump. That's just a quick fade, and then I could throw an overlay over the top, and then I use it to mute myself. So, and then I have that little pop sticker on the back. Some of you may have seen, so I can just hold it in my hand. But depends on what you want to use it for.
My primary use for my Stream Decks is for the comms. So I have a 32 that we use for that in the office for comms, and that works out really well. The smaller one, I have the little 6-button version, and I use that for presentations if I want to do forward, back. Well, actually use them for like playing through movies and stuff like that. So just what I like about the little one is just I have a handful of little adjustments that I can make that I can just kind of go forward, I can go backward, and I don't have to. The problem with the bigger key, I got the larger keys, whatever the original one was that had a lot more keys to it. And I got that one, and the problem really is that I kept on hitting the wrong buttons. so when the smaller one came out, I went to the smaller one. Go ahead, George.
So like Guy mentioned, obviously for vMix, a lot of us use it now more for the cloud and locally. But this is my Stream Deck. This is just office hours. So all of those are just tied into my office hours setup. So you could use it for a whole lot of things.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, I use it in conjunction with Companion app. It's a free open source app. It gives me all my customizable buttons. I use it to control Zoom OSC commands to control Zoom, as well as to send changes to Mimo Live on my Mac.
Go ahead, David.
Yep. And I have a ATEM Mini as a sub switcher for the Extreme, and I'm using the 6-button. The Mini's underneath the desk. The 6-button brings those 4 buttons so I can cut on top. Works for me.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I still feel like I just used this I was just on comms for an event, and I still feel like the buttons aren't as responsive as I'd like them to be. And I don't know if I'm hitting them the wrong way or if I'm doing something, but I always feel like I don't have enough confidence in the Stream Deck to depend on it. Every time I hit it and it doesn't do exactly what I expect it to do, what goes in the back of my head is I probably should just use comms for this, because I find myself like tapping and then tapping again. like I'm just gonna tap this again to make it work. And I know that other people don't seem to have that problem, but you don't have that problem, Chris, at all. It just works.
No, I hear people say it all the time, so I don't want to discount it. But I've never had an issue with pushing a button when I didn't think it worked. I will say that the plugin architecture that ties into Zoom, that the icon does not update immediately, and that's a bigger issue. So I can push the button and go, oh, it still has a slash through it. It's still muted, and it's in the process of updating, and I might mistakenly hit it. But if I just hover my finger over the button, push it, and count on it, it totally works. I don't know. I don't understand what it is.
I do find that there's like a 200 or 300 millisecond lag when I push the button to when Unity opens and closes. That makes me a little crazy. Like if I click on it in the interface, it doesn't do that. If I click on it in the Stream Deck, it does. All right, we are now changing subjects. There are so many questions, Aaron. I'm just going to warn you that the crowd has been building up. So we have I don't know. I think you might have the record for the most number of questions before you even got on. So a lot of people that are pretty interested. So tell us about what you do at Microsoft.
Sure. Hi, I'm Aaron. I am the product manager working on our broadcast features for Teams. I've been here at Microsoft for over 3 years. Prior to Microsoft, I owned my own software and media production company doing VR, all that kind of stuff. But my job is to take Teams beyond just being a communications platform and integrating it with all the things that you guys out there are doing, which is using it for broadcasting.
Yeah, and how did you get in? How did you end up with that role? Is this, you were doing this before, right? Or were you...
Yeah, so it's actually interesting. I started out at Microsoft being in charge as the product manager for Skype TX.
Yeah.
And I brought in NDI to Skype back in the day. And this was, 3.5 years ago, and we had an eye to the future of, maybe Teams will become big. And so we actually built NDI back then with an eye to the future. And I was moved over to Teams. I had a really weird position in Teams for a minute where I was on Teams, but I was working on Skype for Alexa. And I was like, that's not quite the right role for me. And so in a hackathon, we took our project from the NDI from Skype and ported it over to Teams. And from there, we were to show leadership the interest that people would have in using Teams in a case like broadcasting. And so really one of the beautiful things about working at Microsoft that I've experienced personally is that leadership really supports your dreams and your visions if you can prove them out. And so we did. And so now I've landed in this amazing role of getting to build these things because that's what I'm passionate about.
That's great. So what's specialized inside of Teams for broadcast?
Sure. So, we do obviously teleconferencing type stuff, right? And so my goal is to make sure that every camera on every desk can be a contribution source for any production. And so over time, we're tiptoeing towards more and more of this stuff. The first thing we did was we brought NDI to Teams 2 years ago, actually more than 2 years ago. It was right at the beginning of COVID. So we just happened to have this feature right then and there. I think our first major customer was The Voice using Teams for broadcast with NDI. And then over time, we continued to improve that NDI experience, continue to improve the resolution. We have some features that we did behind the scenes to make sure that when you're broadcasting over NDI, you get a better quality signal than if you don't. And then today, actually, a blog post is going up today talking about that we are releasing SDI out of Teams. So direct SDI out of Teams if you use AJA or Blackmagic devices. So super excited to continue to move this forward as well as other features coming out in Pike.
So when you say a direct out from that, do you mean that you could, if I have, let's say, a Blackmagic 8K with 8 outputs, I could get 8 outputs from that, 8 individual outputs from Team?
So this one I haven't opened up yet. We've tested this in the Microsoft Studios. This is going to be good on my personal computer whenever I get around to putting it in there. But technically, yes, you can get 8. We've tested it. You can get 8 signals out. You shouldn't do 8 signals out. And that's because of just how bandwidth matters in these kinds of situations, right? So
but if you had the bandwidth, if you have a 1 gig connection to your computer, theoretically you could do it?
Theoretically, but so one of the things so first and foremost, Teams is an enterprise solution, right? Okay. And so each client has a max number of megabytes per second that can pull down, and that is controlled in your Teams admin center. Okay, the default is 4, and typically, basically, most customers only have a 4 megabyte down per client. And that's because if you're in an enterprise solution, if you're in an office space, you don't want everybody on that floor.
I don't know if this is true or not, but we had the opinion that Skype was half of whatever bandwidth it thought you had. It would just use like it would just like if you had 20 megs, it would give you 10. If you had 10 megs, it would give you 5. It just was like I'll share the connection with you.
Well, yeah, well, and that's a different. Well, even there, that's more than what I'm talking about, right? But that's because Skype is a consumer product, right? Not an enterprise product. And so when I talk with people about broadcast situations like this, what I typically suggest is that you only use 1, maybe 2 outputs from a single device, because each device gets those 4 megabytes, right? Each client does.
Well, how high can you turn it up? How high can you turn it in the admin?
You're asking a tricky question. Okay. It is basically the rule of thumb is 4. You can pull it up and maybe see some enhancement, but typically what we talk about is a 4 megabyte down connection for a single client.
Got it. Very good. Yeah. So that's exciting though. That's really exciting to be able to get back to baseband And that's rolling out right now. Is that today or next week?
So it's rolling out today. It's being announced today. If you don't have it today, then just update your computer, update your Teams client,
Right.
and it'll be there soon. I've tested this on these, these little small guys, right? The Ultra Studio monitors, $130, I think they are. Works beautifully, works wonderfully. So AJA, same thing. T-Tap. I've got a T-Tap Pro that I've played with it on. Beautiful output. So basically, any modern AJA or Blackmagic device that you plug into your computer, Teams should now recognize it, and you'll get an option to directly send that out. You'll get an option to upscale and keep a constant resolution and frame rate out of the SDI, because SDI needs to be standardized, right?
Yep.
And that's the difference between how NDI and SDI works out of Teams. NDI, we give you the exact pure signal that you're receiving on your computer. SDI, we upscale it for you.
Oh, that's great. Go ahead, Chris. You had a question?
Yeah, so Alex, help me out. What Aaron is saying here, would that mean that with the hardware infrastructure that you've built for Office Hours 2.0, could you just launch Teams on all of those
Well,
Mac
the problem
minis?
is that our minis, what we're doing is we're doing 4 outs for every mini, 4 1080p outs for every mini. So that'd probably be more than we'd want to do inside of Teams. But the 090 infrastructure, we have 16 PCs, 16 Dells that sit there, and they output their feeds. So we could theoretically put in just these little T-taps or the little, or even, actually we have Blackmagic cards there now. We have Duo cards in them. So we could literally take a Duo card and just push it out. I wouldn't have to buy any hardware to support Teams in the hardware.
Aaron, didn't you say that out of one device you could get 4 SDIs?
From a technical point of view, you can get up to 8. We've tested the Decklink Quad 2, and we get up to 8. But the quality,
bandwidth per computer is per computer is 4 megs.
Exactly. We don't recommend more than 2 per computer. Mm-hmm. But I say that, but I also know people that are doing 4 on a computer, and they want.
Would that be 1 meg per stream, right?
Yeah, about that. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then, Aaron, I actually, I won't go into that detail. Quite often, I am invited into Teams meetings that are hosted and controlled by other people, my clients, some of them in a little town called Redmond. And I'm asked to record these things. Can I dial in just as a participant and still get access to isolated feeds via SDI?
So the way that this works is it is based upon a meeting policy. Okay. So one of the primary feature, actually, I'd say the primary feature of Teams is that we are a secure platform that's enterprise grade. And so if you have a Teams account, you have an administrator that says, hey, you can or can't do this, right? So the first thing that needs to happen is your administrator needs to turn on the local broadcasting for you. So if you have it turned on your tenant, and then you go to someone else's tenant, and that's the way these things work, right? I have an account, you have an account. Unless, it is possible for the other tenant to block you, but more than likely you will have access to be able to get that stream out if you have it turned on for you. And then of course, as a federated login, I'm using very Teamsy terms right here, but as an unknown user in someone else's tenant, they can also assign a policy to you and say, hey, you can get out the NDI and SDI.
All right.
Thank you.
And any other announcements or any other features that you want to stand out before we jump into the questions? There's
sure. So the second part of the blog, and so this is probably going to be super interesting to you guys on this call, is that the second part of it is we are also talking about the fact that we are going into a preview state for isolated audio out. And so what that means is there's going to be the ability for, instead of the way that NDI has worked up until today, is that if you do an NDI stream out, you would get a muxed audio of the entire meeting.
Yes.
When you turn this feature on, you'll get isolated audio from each participant. You'll get a muxed audio if you do the active speaker stream. Mm-hmm. So you can get both audios out over NDI and now SDI. The thing I will say though is that we are going to roll this out very, very, very slowly. Because there are thousands of people that use Teams for their production today. And so in these cases, we want to be careful that we don't break that, right? And so we're going to roll it out very slowly. If anyone on this call is in particularly interested, I think my contact information will be somewhere. I would actually encourage you guys just go ahead and email me. I'm looking for a few more people just to continue to test this as we're in the final stage of rolling this out, because your productions are so important. We want to make sure we get these things right as we roll it out.
That's exciting. And that the isolated audio, if I send it out of SDI, that it's the isolated audio of that feed is going out with that signal.
Correct.
They're bound together. That's great.
Yep.
It's fantastic. Fantastic. That's really exciting. I mean, isolated audio is something that we all dream about. I think we actually dream about it.
It's been our dream for years. I mean, this is literally, we've worked really hard to bring this out. And it's because we get feedback continually from guys like you that, hey, the most important thing that you're missing is isolated audio. So now the next question I'm going to have for the entire community at large is, we did it for you. What do you want next?
Isolated audio returns.
Oh, ooh.
so like I can tell you that isolated audio returns is really important, because then we can do comms. So the way we do that is we have to take everybody out. So we have everybody in their own meeting, whether, and that can be Teams or Zoom or whatever. Sometimes we have shows where we're mixing and matching WebEx, Teams, Zoom, Blue Jeans, because different companies are different. So every computer just knows what it's in, and then we cross-link all of that in our hardware. Yep. And because of that, we can now have talkback to every person. So I can just go, hey, Aaron, I need you to move your light over, or I need you to do this or whatever. And so that talkback doesn't require any complexity on the user side. They just log in the way they normally log in, but now I can talk into their ear. What we don't have when we do it inside of when everybody's in the same meeting together, the problem we have is we can't do that. And that is, it's the difference between a fun show and a real show is being able to talk to, like, we've had ones where someone's Skype, this was when we were doing it on Skype, someone's Skype was falling apart and we needed them to restart their computer. There was just some kind of memory thing that was going on. So we told the host, hey George, I need you to keep talking. Don't go to Lauren. And then I go to Lauren and I go, Lauren, I need you to restart your computer. We potted them down. They restart the computer. They come back up. We test it, make sure it's right. We come back to George and tell George, you can talk to Lauren again. And he cuts right in, and the viewer sees nothing. And we're able to sit there and just make all of that happen. And they didn't have to know anything other than how to open Skype, and that's, so that return audio is lethal. Like, it's just so important to have. And anyway, so that'd be my request. Does anyone else have any other requests for Aaron while we have him on the hot seat? No? Okay. Anyway, that's our big request. Give us an inch and we'll take a mile. So I think, go ahead, John, and then we're going to go to the questions.
I think that client for the remote participants is a little lacking versus the Zoom client. It's really thick. And I just want to know, like, what the plans are for that and making that experience as close to possible. Like, I have a trouble moving my sales team from Zoom to Teams, even though we're a Teams shop for all of our internal clients, because of screen sharing, stuff like that just, I don't think works as well on the web client alone.
Oh, on the web client. I see what you're saying. No, so that's an interesting feedback. I would love for you to give a more detailed questions or to me or whatnot in terms of, over email or even now in terms of what you find lacking. The web experience is incredibly similar to the client experience for Teams. And it's incredibly, when I've used it, it's incredibly robust. Now, granted, 90% of my time is spent in the actual traditional client. But I've actually heard the opposite typically, is that we have a very powerful web experience. So I would love to know what to improve for you on that.
And then the last thing before we jump to it is, for all of these video conferencing, what we really want is a broadcast contributor client that has no tools. So it says, hey, we're going to take over your audio and your video and everything else. Is that okay? And you say, okay. And then boom, we're in. And now we can, because we deal with a lot of people who are not technologically savvy, and we don't want them to have a login. We don't, it's just a link. Like, it's a hard link. And it says, I'm going to bring you in, and you don't need to know anything about it other than how to turn your computer on. And that would be, for us, pretty important. That would save a lot of time for us, because we spend half our time getting participants ready, just having them figure out how to find a button.
So you're saying that you want, like, camera controls and stuff like that, where you can control their camera input, you can control their audio input. Oh, okay.
Yeah. And if that was able to spew out OSC, it'd be really useful for us. So anyway, all right, next question.
Our first question here for this section comes from Daniel Goldstein in Washington, D.C. And he says, Zoom OSC is a very powerful tool that allows us to programmatically control almost all the functions of a Zoom meeting or webinar. What's the closest equivalent for Teams?
So the closest equivalent for any kind of control like that is going to be our robust APIs. So there's two ways to get at APIs for Teams. That's through the Microsoft Graph API, and then there's also the actual client SDK. Now, I may not be answering exactly what you're trying to ask here in that, is there a product that does all that stuff right now? No, but all the hooks and all those capabilities are available through one of those two API sets. Someone just needs to go build it. And I think that there'd be a great opportunity for someone to launch a business with those level of controls.
Is it hard to get the APIs? Is there any kind of a process, or is it just open to anyone that wants to develop it?
That's all wide open. There's billions of pages of documentation on all that. I would say look at meeting extensions. So meeting extensions is going to be the most controlled during a meeting, and so people are trying to build stuff like that. It's there. Actually, this would be a great time to talk about something that you guys may not even be aware of, and that's our BDK, our Teams Broadcast Development Kit. So last June and July timeframe, we actually released an entire development kit for broadcasters that allows you to connect into a Teams meeting, extract the video, and then do whatever you need to do with it. So it's both ingestion and egress, and it is for RTMP and SRT. So there's a solution out there right now that if you're a developer, we've already built the basic building blocks for you to get RTMP and SRT in and out of Teams. There's a number of large video software companies that are currently playing with it. I'll put it that way, and I can't talk about that any deeper. But the BDK, it's out there. It's open source, and it's probably got a lot of the tools that you're looking for.
Go ahead, Jason, real quick.
Yeah, I was just going to ask what protocols to use, HTTP or something else?
For the BDK, the BDK, we can do you can do RTMP or SRT in and out.
Next question.
Diogo Nush in Barcelona, Spain is next, and he says, I regularly help a nonprofit broadcast their Teams meeting to a Teams Live event. I usually run two computers, screen scraping the meeting on PC1 and feeding it to PC2 as a webcam, ATEM or NDI. Is there a way to do this differently and hopefully better?
Yeah, so Teams Live events, there is an option for NDI out of the produced content. So instead of screen scraping, you should just be pulling that NDI feed directly out and then pump it into the next meeting.
Next question.
Next one comes from Mitchell Hill in Wilmington, Delaware here on the panel. And he says, I have a client that loves the quality of my Zoom calls and wants me to do the same for their Teams calls. Can I use the same equipment and software?
Sure. I don't know of anything that would work on Zoom that doesn't work on Teams. So we do all the virtual camera support, all that kind of stuff. So whatever software or tools and hardware you're using for them, you should have the exact same experience on Teams.
Next question.
Brian Bevito in Detroit, Michigan up next. He says, does Teams offer a 1080p account?
I love that question. And the reason I love that question is because I'm a product manager. And when people ask questions like this, I get to go back to my leadership and say, hey, people are asking for this kind of thing. So, hey, if you guys are interested in an account that has an enhanced resolution, I would love to get that direct feedback. Let me know what resolutions you want, what features you want, and how much you pay.
But currently it's limited to 720. Is that right?
Yes. Well, I'll say yes to that.
Yep. Next question.
Jacob Goodnight in Indianapolis, Indiana comes up next. He says, what's the max participant resolution supported in Teams? And what about NDI, SDI out?
And of course, this was asked at 5 a.m. So before our little conversation. So go ahead.
Yeah. So the bringing in content, bringing in streams is at 720p right now. In terms of NDI and SDI, so the way that those work, if you send out an NDI stream, we are going to send out exactly what your client is receiving. Now, there's always fluctuations in what you're receiving based upon your computer. So this is like an important thing that I talk about a lot behind the scenes. But we're always kind of measuring your GPU, CPU, and bandwidth, right? And so depending on what your computer is hitting on those marks depends on what kind of quality of video you're asking for. What you get into your computer is going to be exactly what we send out over NDI. And that could fluctuate depending on what's going on with the rest of your computer, the number of people on the call, et cetera, et cetera. The good news is that we give you a pure feed. With our new SDI that we're releasing today, we do software upscaling. So because the hardware requires a consistent frame rate, consistent resolution, we upscale it to whatever choice you have. So we use the SDKs that are available from AJA and Blackmagic. Their devices return to us a list of the resolutions they support. We show that to you, and you get to choose whatever you want.
Next question.
Speaking of early questions, this went in at 4:04 a.m. Douglas Carmichael says, do you see teams focusing on corporate environments or developing into a universal video communication tool similar to Zoom?
I think we're already there. So we have teams. So we have teams for enterprise, right? And that's their paid service. There's also teams for the general consumer, teams for your life. That's part of the app. That's part of the application. That's part of the mobile apps. And it's also part of Windows 11. So if you're using Windows 11 right now, there is a Teams that comes pre-installed that is for consumer use. So we're already there, and it's very widely used. Mm-hmm.
Next question.
Jonas Dattel in Stuttgart, Germany says, we had a lot of issues using virtual webcam to send our produced feed into Teams. Is there a better way to do it?
I would be curious as to the issues you're having. The one issue that I've heard in the past, and that I've actually personally experienced. So I'll tell my story here. Okay, so I actually have a ATEM Mini right here that I put this camera's going into, and so on and so forth. And I discovered that for a while I kept on having like random flickerings on my feed. And one time my video stopped and I didn't know why. Turns out that this was defaulted to 60 frames per second. Teams will attempt to handle 60 frames per second, but we only officially support 30 frames per second. So if you are sending in a feed at 60 frames per second, that is going to be the first guess I would have as to why you would have any kind of issue with a video input into Teams. So just make sure you're at 30 frames per second and you should be good. If you have issues after that, I would not know what they are. And again, I would encourage you to send me information, and then we can talk about getting logs, and we can talk about making the improvements and fixing whatever issues there are.
Next question.
TJ Asher in Minneapolis says, what's the best way to stream video during a Teams live event? The last time we pushed video into a Teams live event, the video was playing back at 3 frames per second.
I'm going to give the exact same answer. Like if you've got an issue like that, there's got to be some sort of resolution or frames per second problem that is not an officially supported feed, or that it's an open question there. Are you feeding it in via virtual camera? Are you feeding in via an encoder? My guess is going to be you just got to make sure your resolution and frames per second are correct.
Next question.
A. Mitchells in Washington comes up next, and he says, what's the absolute maximum of attendees that can natively view within an MS Teams event, and how can the largest numbers best be achieved?
So there's two types of Teams things, right? There's a Teams meeting, and then there's a Teams live event. In either case, the interactive portion of it, where you have the chat messages and you can talk and have controls and stuff like that, you're limited to 1,000 people. Currently, you have 1,000 people that can be in a meeting. In addition to that, we have what we call like our overflow room, and with the overflow room, you can have 10,000 people watching it. So the actual number is more than 10,000. And I'm pretty sure that we actually have a thing going right now, because we've had so much usage and because we want to help people out with COVID, that there's an additional 10,000 that sits on top of that. So if I'm correct, and someone can check my math somewhere, you can actually have a 20,000 person audience on Teams right now.
And that's is that a switch from WebRTC to HLS between the overflow and the real time?
It's just about the interactivity.
But the one that's the overflow room has a slower. They're behind, right, by a couple seconds.
Yeah, because we do some process. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Next question.
John Snyder in Reno, Nevada is up next. He says, "Is there a way to make sure Teams will upload full resolution when sharing a screen through an ATEM Mini set as ATEM Mini set as a webcam? With larger meetings, the resolution seems to drop."
Was that about screen sharing? Was that the first word up there?
Is there a way to make sure Teams will upload a full HD resolution when sharing a screen through the ATEM Mini set as a webcam? So with larger meetings, the resolution seems to drop.
So we actually we've done a lot of work to prioritize actual screen share. So if you actually turn on screen share for a Teams meeting, we do a lot of things in the back end to make sure that you get a super crisp, full HD screen share of what's going on at full resolution. We actually bring down the sizes of the other videos that you're receiving to make sure that you can, because content first, right? Is content first. If you're sharing something, we presume that this is the most important thing that's happening in the meeting. That being said, if you're bringing content in like that over an ATEM, we just see it as a virtual camera. We have no way of knowing that. We don't know that it's a screen share. So all the time, I would recommend that you do a direct screen share into Teams because you're going to get the best experience there. If you're coming in from ATEM, it's going to be seen just like any other content. Now, the second part of that answer is, if you're doing that, make sure you spotlight that feed. So if you guys don't know, in Teams, we have a term called spotlight. And when you spotlight, that gives priority to that specific video. So there's a little button you can do, and it'll be a spotlight. And then all of a sudden, that video becomes bigger on everyone else's computer, and it receives the priority of any kind of megabytes down to the client.
Next question.
Next one comes from Cherry Cheetah in Dallas, Texas. He says, what's the recording quality options in Teams? For example, ISO recordings, ISO audio, gallery view, and so forth.
Yep. So we just talked about earlier that we are introducing the ISO audio out for NDI and SDI. For NDI, you can get the together mode and the large gallery. You can get those as streams. You can't currently get them over SDI. SDI is currently only participant videos. Yeah, so the quality, I think we covered that already. The quality is going to be variable on NDI.
Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, Aaron, one of the features I've always wanted to have would be to, you log into a meeting and then somebody can say, this person, this person, this person, absolute priority, just give me an ISO recording of them. They can record in the cloud somewhere. I don't need it right away. Give me a link at the end of the meeting where I can download those files. And again, I might be an outlier because I use these products, Zoom, for digital remote acquisition for things that I have to edit. But if I could get those just at any time, and anybody could, and because what'll happen is and you probably don't know this, so I apologize if I'm repeating something. There might be 10 people on a call to monitor 2 people being recorded. You have the lawyers, you have the product managers, and all the clipboard people. And these are the 2 people that we're recording. So if I can just go, yep, I need that guy and that guy, ISO audio, ISO picture, as high quality as you can give it to me, I think that'd be an awesome feature.
Yeah, absolutely. Next question.
Next one comes to us from Brett Dykus in New York City, and Brett says, when will it be possible to use third-party encoders for Teams live events open to guest users?
Can I just say that we have we're building that technology now. I know the timeline on it, but it's if you can look at our announcements, so we have a roadmap that we put out there. And if you use Teams, like, you get updates on things that are coming and whatnot. Encoders are on the roadmap. They are coming. I know when they're launching, but that's not what we're talking about today.
Next question.
Stan Chan in Roseville's back in with, can you describe bringing Azure media services and Teams meetings to perform more complex production pipelines?
Sure. Yeah. No. I mean, that's great.
Oh, yeah. I said bringing, but actually bridging. Can you describe bridging Azure and Teams meetings to perform more complex production pipelines? Sorry about that.
Yeah. I think the place to start there is the BDK, right? So as soon as you start working with the Broadcast Development Kit, you'll be able to get SRT out of Teams. And once you have that out, there are plenty of options and opportunities to bring things over to Azure. Of course, the BDK works best in Azure, and so the two would be very close to each other, and you can presume from there that there might already be conversations about how to make that even better in the future. But yeah, the BDK is the place to start for you there.
Next question.
Greg Gibson in Washington, D.C. We tested Teams NDI when it first came out. What we found was that you got one 1080 pin. After that, each additional pin reduced the resolution by half. So the second person dropped the resolution to 720 and 4+ people to 640. Has that changed?
So that is all going to be dependent upon your computer. So it really is it's a question of your GPU, CPU, and bandwidth. And so one of the things that I'm excited about with the SDI is it helps that bandwidth a little bit, because if you start pushing out NDI over your local network, it may see that as, network congestion and start to ask for lower quality or things of that nature. And so that's one of the issues that we have that just inherent in the nature of NDI. It's powerful because of the local network, but it also does network congestion. So I would say that using the SDI outputs and then using multiple clients to get those multiple streams is the best option.
Next question.
Douglas Carmichael is up next. He says, can those without Microsoft 365 subscriptions utilize these Teams features for specific events?
No. So that is one of the balances of us being an enterprise solution. So because we're an enterprise solution, that gives you more options that are controlled over the different policies that you have in Teams. The consumer version of Teams does not have the local broadcasting policy turned on for that segment of users, because it shouldn't be there, right? When you join a meeting, whenever you're joining a meeting, the person that's in control of that meeting should be in control of what can and cannot happen to their content. We're all about security and privacy, and so we would not. It wouldn't be appropriate for someone to be able to join any meeting and suddenly start extracting content out without controls there. If you want those controls, that's part of what you get when you pay for the license.
Next question.
Diogo Nush is back from Barcelona. He says, is there a way to mute the meeting group pop-up messages, waiting in the lobby and so forth, on a participant PC in order to scrape the screen without those messages showing up?
Again, no. And again, the answer sits in the exact same spot, right? Where we are a communications platform. And so as things happen during the meeting, it is important that we have the ability to tell everyone what's going on. So like whenever you start a meeting and you start using NDI or SDI, we have pop-ups that say, hey, this meeting is being broadcast. If someone records it, they say, hey, this meeting is being recorded. And making sure that the people that are in your meeting get those notifications, especially when they relate to privacy or security, is the most important thing. That is one of the reasons that we continue development in the broadcast space with NDI and SDI and the future technologies we're planning, is so that you can get that clean feed out, because that's what you really want. You don't want to do screen scrape because you're going to lose resolution and you need extra processes and so on and so forth. You should be using the tools that are available.
The next question.
Ronnie Hoofsey in Tromsø, Norway says, is the SDI feature in the new Teams update also working on Mac and Mac M1, and what version is supporting external SDI?
Great question. Okay, so yes, the feature is in Mac. And yes, by technicality, the feature works on M1. However, there are some updates that need to happen with our partners' side of things in terms of their devices working the way that they're supposed to work on M1. So all those fixes are in place and on their way. I'm pretty sure that there are, I don't want to call anyone out here, but you should have some success with some devices on M1. Maybe not as much success with other devices on M1, but we are in constant communication with AJA and Blackmagic to make sure that works for everybody. But from a technical point of view, yes, it should work. If it doesn't work, then just sit tight.
Next question.
Hey, Mitchell's in Washington up next. Can you please bring in and demonstrate the best ways to bring in people or events on Zoom or WebEx clients into a Microsoft Teams meeting or MS Teams event? Thanks.
So I'm not sure I followed the question. So someone's in a Zoom meeting.
Yeah, this is a typical problem that we get into is mixed. So companies have policies that they can only use another product. And they have to, they can't, nothing else is going to register on their computer, and everything's going to be locked down. So they can only use Teams, or they can only use Zoom, or they can only use WebEx, because that's the company or government policy that they're limited to.
Sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
So yeah, so I mean, I think the answer then would be sitting up with Zoom or WebEx and figuring out what all egress options they have. Right.
Yeah, the way we've done it is to do exactly what I talked about before, which is to build this two-way connection. We do it in hardware to basically, that is its own little participant that gets then drawn back in, and we can send the audio back and forth. So literally, we call it a cross. We used to have a big one that was called a cross connect that would do satellite, Polycom, Cisco, and then all of the different ones, and you could just mix and match any one of those that you wanted, and it's just two-way communication inside of a big Dante patch. We could get everybody to talk to each other, and so it didn't really matter. But we did that because we had this problem. But I think that there's no native way to do that. I think you need to resort to external hardware. Next question.
Stan Chan in Roseville, California is up next. He says, I looked at the broadcast development kit last year, and it seemed to be limited to 1080p at 30 frames per second. Can it support 8K or 4K content?
No, 1080p, that's accurate, right? So you can pump in through the bots, you can pump in 1080p to a meeting. We would not be accepting 4K at this point.
Next question.
Dennis Champion Walker in Mansfield, Great Britain says, are there any plans to allow multiple simultaneous logins to the Teams client? As a contractor working for a number of different companies using Teams, this would be really helpful.
So I'm going to answer this strangely in that I live in the future sometimes. And so I sometimes get lost on features that aren't my features as to what we've released and what we haven't released. I can say that in my current Teams client, I'm logged into 3 different accounts. So I think the answer is yes, and I think the answer is you can already do that. But the fact that the question is being asked, maybe I'm still living in the future and I just gave away stuff. I want to go back to the last question real quick though. In terms of 4K. Guys on the panel in general, is 4K desired? 4K input? Do we want that?
Eventually. I mean, I right now, rock solid 1080p for the shows that I do is table stakes. Like for every participant. Like I can't do an event without 1080p 2997 or 30. That's what I need. But we are doing some shows that would greatly benefit, especially gaming shows, esports. That would definitely benefit from 4K 60, and so we're experimenting with other software that will allow us to do that, like Stream Voodoo and stuff like that. That's really leaning. It comes out of gaming, so that's what it does. But it doesn't have the creature comforts of a general meeting system. It's high performance WebRTC. So we definitely, when you see it, it gets really addicting. But then you have a hard time getting the 4K into the computer and everything else. I think for most discussions, 1080p is probably enough for most times. But within a year, we'll probably be doing more and more events at 4K.
So okay, that's great feedback. So today, 1080p, rock solid, higher bandwidth, getting into the meeting itself, and then a year out, you're saying we need a 4K solution a year out.
Yeah, I mean the dark version of this show that you see that's called OH Program, that is an HDR feed to YouTube. so that is a HDR 1080p feed to YouTube. So what we're going towards is looking for solutions that will allow us to do 422 10-bit contribution to the meeting, and then eventually 4K. Okay. At that level, we believe that we can produce shows that look better than broadcast over WebRTC, but we also don't want to be constrained to enterprise bandwidth. I mean, I want to be able to turn that thing up. Again, with the Stream Voodoo, we can turn that up to 10 megs, AV1. So at that point, we can have a very, very high quality stream. So that's the kind of thing that we want to see from everybody at some point. Right now and this is actually, by the way, this is 4K as well, the OH program. So it's 4K. Now, when we're full screen, it's 1080p being scaled up, but when we're in the boxes, it's really 4K. So it's, anyway, so those are the kind of things that we're, but within a year, this program will be in 4K HDR, and we're going to try to figure out a way to do the contribution at 422 10-bit.
Awesome. So as I said before, if everyone else on the panel, everyone watching, reach out and tell me that exact same thing.
Okay.
because those kind of details of what you guys are looking for, that's fuel for a PM, and that's fuel for our future decisions.
Should we just send it to you, or is there a place that we should go to the website? Because we're pretty good at swarming. So we just want to make sure if there's a suggestion box that's less painful than you getting hundreds of emails.
Both. We have a user voice out there somewhere. But
you and I will talk about it, and then we'll let people know where they can file their opinions.
Excellent.
Next question.
Next one comes to us from Stan Chan in Roseville again. He says, as your media services support Dolby Atmos, can Teams meetings support it in the future?
Let's not talk about audio today. Let's talk about video today.
Next question.
Good answer. A. Mitchells in Washington says, what's the best conference hosting platform for an online event based in Microsoft Teams to help attendees launch the Teams meetings, events, webinar rooms in their schedule?
Yeah, I wish I had an answer to that. And I should have an answer to that because I'm technically on the events team. But I'm a little bit different in that I do the broadcast stuff. So I know that we have several different events and webinar partners that we work with. I would say that's probably not an answer that I could readily give, except for to check out our live events page on Teams, and there's going to be answers there.
Next question.
Stefan Fischer, watching us from Würzburg, Germany, says, will there be a future with similarly sized windows instead of permanently changing windows sizes?
Yeah, so those permanently changing window sizes is because of notifications that pop up, quality that changes, you changing your own window, people turning on and off their video. So again, the answer is going to actually be no, and that's why we're investing in this broadcast technology, right? So we know that people want to use us in broadcast, and they want that clean, stable feed, and so the answer for that is NDI and SDI.
Next question. Oh, go ahead, Chris, before we go to the next question.
It's important to mention, Aaron, because I don't think everybody knows every button. When you hover over a person, you can pin that person. When you hover over them, you can say, what do you guys call it? Fit to screen, fit to window, something. You can lock people into your display at 16:9. So if you're trying to scrape something or whatever, or record something, you can get it to a 16:9 frame. It's important to mention that.
Right. Yeah. And Spotlight works too, right? So those are your friends. Spotlighting, pinning, and then controlling the fit to frame versus photo frame. Those are your friends. But in this question, I'm presuming that they're doing screen scraping, and you never know what might pop up in front of your video.
And the output is probably not very CPU intensive, with the new SDI feature, I imagine. So
yeah, no, it shouldn't be, because we're sending the hardware.
So you could have a bunch of little $300 or $400 PCs with those little outputs and just have a stack of them and just pulling all the stuff out.
That's actually exactly what I expect people to be doing. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Next question.
Next one comes from Jason Panks in Nashville, and he says, thoughts or ideas on bringing guests into a meeting from outside the company or organization?
Sure. So, we have a very basic link that you can click on, and it drops you right in. The only thing that they have to do is put a name in. So, if you have an open meeting, you can. There's different kinds of meetings, but a completely open meeting without registration, without invites and stuff like that, you can generate a link. You can email that link to anyone, and they go to their web browser. The only thing they have to do is they type their name in. We use their default mic and camera. They can change those settings, but they just drop right into the meeting after just putting their name in.
Next question.
Douglas Carmichael is curious as to whether Teams might have an original sound or music mode option for music-related use cases.
Well, we actually do, yeah. So we have music mode that increases the quality of the music in all aspects. It also turns off all the effects. It actually was built with EDU in mind for music teachers during COVID in order to do music classes. That was one of the things that was built for in mind. But actually, I think there's a blog post about it because it just was fully released. Actually, I've got it right here. So we just released it. We announced it in our blog on the 24th. So great timing on that question 2 weeks ago. So it should be available to everyone now.
The next question.
Wenki in India is up next, and here she says, are there any plans to have a green room or a backstage area to queue up guests and do tech checks before going live?
That would be a great feature, and I'm sure we'd love feedback about the details on that, because I definitely have thought about that at some point in the past.
And I'm not as familiar. Do you have an equivalent to like breakout rooms?
Yeah, we've had breakout rooms for at least a year, maybe two, actually.
And you can do any number of them.
I've had access to breakout rooms for at least 2 years. But yes, but yeah, we have breakout rooms.
Yeah. Next question.
Chris Fritchie in Tomball, Texas says, will Teams have a built-in keyer and allow videos as the replacement background?
I don't I hate living in the future sometimes. Green screen features would be great, would be nice. Video playback during it, that's a lot of work to do as well. I would say that's something that you guys should also send emails into and make recommendations on that specific feature.
Yeah, it'd be great if it was a linear key instead of a chroma key. Next question.
John Snyder in Reno, Nevada up next. He says, would the local broadcasting SDI NDI feature work over a VPN like Cisco's Meraki?
Oh, good question. No, no, we don't actually have VPN support for the local broadcasting feature. No, you know what? I've not looked into that. I'll look into that. No, that shouldn't work today, but I'll look into it.
Next question.
Andy Kokendorfer in Vieira, Florida says, how do we contact Aaron Linney? I work at Firefox and have some Teams in-browser questions. Thanks.
Sure. So my email is aaline@microsoft.com. I will say that questions about Firefox browsers is probably not my forte, and I actually don't know anything about that particular topic. But yeah, send me an email. We'll talk.
Next question.
John Wallace in Pontiac, Michigan, U.S. says, Zoom owns the external meeting world because of their client. Is there a goal to move to a thinner client for external attendees?
We have a very robust web client right now. You can log in from anywhere on any web browser and make things work. We also have a very powerful and lightweight Teams client built into Windows 11 that is out there, shipped to millions of computers a day.
Next question.
Christian Ortiz in South Florida, can Teams be used for back-end comms in any way?
Are you asking like a talkback channel or? Yeah. I mean, you can set up a second meeting and run it that way. But this problem space of having a talkback channel is not new, is not unknown, and it is something that we'd like to continue to explore. So again, all the emails and all the requirements, send them to me because that is exactly what I'm gathering right now for future endeavors.
Next question.
Thor Olson in San Antonio is looking at screen real estate. Is there a way to separate out chat, self-view, participants, and so forth, and the main display window, speakers and slides and so forth, so that they all don't appear in the same window on screen?
Talking about video things today. So that'd be a great feature.
Yeah. Next question.
John Snyder in Reno, Nevada. Just started using Teams webinars and had to change the start time of the event. Our attendees didn't get notified of the schedule change. The presenters did. What's the best way to inform everyone of changes like that?
So that should have worked. Whenever you make a change like that, there should be an email or notification that goes out to everyone that's part of the event. If that's something that didn't work for you, that is likely just a small issue, or maybe there was a button that wasn't pressed correctly. I don't want to put blame on anyone else other than us. But if you have details about that, I'd be glad to look into that for you, because again, I am on the live events team. So if you send me that information, we can see what we can find out.
And functionally, I'll just say from a wetware perspective is we start all of our meetings a half an hour to an hour early, even this one that we do every day. And regardless of where the speakers are, and we have to figure out a way to manage the speakers and prepare them, but we bring them in because we want to allow the audience to get in, to warm up, to be ready to go, to get through any issues they have. All of those things get done long ahead of time. And if we're going to communicate something, we communicate it through the video window. So just something to think about. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael says, would the personal Teams client be accessible to Mac users, not just Windows 11?
Personal Teams client. the Teams client is already available on Mac. Maybe I'm.
Yep, I think it is. Next question.
A. Mitchell's again, and from Washington. For a large-scale integrated Teams-based hybrid event, what would be your recommendation for a for-hire service company or a system product to buy to provide venue-wide high-performance Wi-Fi for 2,000 to 8,000 on-site attendees to deliver the best Teams experience?
Someone else on the panel want to take
that? Straight Up Technologies is the right one. Tech. So Straight Up Technologies is the one that will do that at the highest quality. Either that or Castle. Next question.
Eduardo Augustine in Panama says, is there a technical documentation on frame rates and bit rates and requirements for recommended performance with Teams?
So we have playbooks that we give out when people are looking to consult with us in terms of how to best produce things within Teams or whatnot. I don't know. I guess that'd be great feedback for you guys, right? It would be, again, just email me and be like, hey, what do you want to see in documentation? Getting documentation out, getting high quality documentation out is something that Microsoft is very well known for, and we do a great job at. If there's a desire to see specific kind of content related around production within Teams, like should we have a PDF for you or a video series, or do you want a microsite or whatever it is you want, inform me on how to best inform you. Because we have all that content, it just may not have made it to your hands in the way that you want it.
Next question.
Diogo Nunch in Barcelona, Spain is back with, hey, does Teams webinar always require registration, or can a simple webinar link be sent out to participants even if from outside the organization? I think you might have.
A simple webinar link we sent, yep.
Next question.
John Snyder is up next from Reno, Nevada. He says, is it possible for two users to co-own a meeting, not just two presenters, or for one person to give ownership to another?
So we currently have a handful of roles within Teams, and we are looking to expand what those roles will look like and what those roles would be. I don't know what we have or have not announced, but that would be a great feature.
Next question.
Stefan Fischer in Würzburg, Germany is back with this question. Can the window size be fixed to 16:9 for all participants with a single click?
No. So the way that the fit to frame versus fill to frame works is it's your own individual computer for your own individual viewing preference. So you have to go in and set what you want to hit for everyone. You can send in, like you can send in like what you want yours to go in, but ultimately we don't control that because again, we're a collaborative communications tool. So maybe I want to see a bunch of faces up close. Maybe someone else wants to see a cinematic approach, and so they can choose on their own.
Next question.
Marty Adius of Maryland says, how many client instances can be launched on a single machine?
I mean, I think it's just one client at a time. So whenever I do testing, I do one client, and then I also you can do a client, and you can also log in on like a web browser, so you can have it going into two accounts that way.
Next question.
Christian Ortiz in South Florida is up next. Are advanced features of Skype crossing over to Teams?
As far as I'm aware, Teams has all the advanced features that Skype would have. So I would need a little more direction on which particular feature is being inquired there.
I haven't tried it on Teams, but does it have the Skype call testing service?
Yeah, we have call tests.
Yeah. Next question.
Ronnie Hofsili is back from Tromsø, Norway, with how to achieve a clean output, only video, no icons, overlays, or other fragments.
NDI is your friend.
There you go. Next question.
Stefan Fischer in Würzburg, Germany, up again with, is there an attractive rate for one-man company that allows me, he says, to use the enterprise features for meetings with clients so that I can set up everything and do not depend on my client?
Sure. I think it's a single Office 365 license is between $10 and $15. That's all you need. Yeah.
There you go. Next question.
Sky Gleason in Seattle, Washington. What is the blog you talked about that has Teams info, please?
So the Microsoft Teams blog is, the long answer is techcommunity.microsoft.com/t5/Microsoft-Teams-blog, or just look for Microsoft Teams blog on Bing.
Go ahead. Next question.
Next one from Steve Voller in Minneapolis says, in live events with many presenters, a recent change pushes live cameras down in the list. Will that be resolved to make it easier to switch cameras?
Which is live cameras down in the mix. So you mean like when someone else is adding their camera in to the meeting?
He notes in live events, it's many presenters and the reach and change.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So the way that live events works is we actually have basically a software switcher within live events. So you can select which source you want to actually choose and which one you want presented to everyone on the screen. There's no plans that I'm aware of to change that particular thing. But again, I'm on the live events team. One of my peers work on that, so feel free to send me that kind of feedback.
Aaron, thank you so much for your time. It's
Thank
really,
you guys.
really
It's been fun. Can we do it again?
Yeah, absolutely. When you have something new, let us know. We'd be happy to have you on. So, yeah, that was really good. I think we had more questions before, and I think we've done more questions today than we've ever done before. So thanks for sorting so many coming in fast. I did warn you ahead of time.
No, I love it. I mean, I love the product. I love what we've been able to do. I love, I love the future of communication and broadcast and all these things. And we just all happen to be at this interesting time of life with a pandemic. And I can't imagine how we would have gotten through it without things like this. I've been quarantined at different times in my home, but I get to see my friends, I get to see my peers, my coworkers through these different tools. Production continues because of these different tools. I think about the Saturday Night Live episode where everything was done through these kinds of things. And so it's just exciting to be a part of this rapid change of pace in life and how we communicate.
Absolutely. All right. Thanks so much. Thanks to our producers for asking all the great questions and keeping this conversation going. And thank you to our panelists. We can't do this without you. So thanks for your contribution. And now we're going to jump into After Hours.